welcome to the first ever White Hill Pod. My name is Andrea, and I am here with the president of Friends of White Hill, Dawn, and the vice president, Kyle. Just a little bit, the mansion is settled in Fieldsboro, New Jersey. It's one of New Jersey's best kept secrets. And we're here today to talk a little bit about the mansion, the history, and just a little bit about the goings on behind the walls of White Hill. So, good afternoon, guys. You want to talk a little bit about your organization and the mansion and some of the people you might have met in the mansion?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a long story. So where do we even begin?
Beginning.
The beginning. So yeah. All right. Well, should we talk about the organization or talk about the?
I think let's talk about the history a little bit. What is White Hill?
That's
People
a little
don't know
bit
what
more,
it is.
just a little bit more interesting. So the house that we're sitting in right now was built in the 1750s, we believe. It has many layers because the house was renovated and there were additions made in the 1780s, the 1790s, the 1890s,
So many.
1920s. So
So
you have
many.
Art Deco, you have Georgian, you have Queen Anne style. So many different
Architectural.
architectural types. That's the word. Yep.
I'm here for the big words.
Yep. Thank God for Kyle. And there were many families. I think we counted 20 some families that have lived here
there's
since its beginning.
been so many families here that have called it home.
Some of them are still here, we believe.
Do you believe?
So you say we believe. What do you mean that some of the families are still here? Are you implying that this may or may not be a haunted space?
Yeah, it definitely has its moments. I mean, I think it has so many layers of people living here. I think that I don't know how it works, but maybe some people just kind of want to stay. I mean, it's been a family home where people live basically since its inception, almost 300 years. And even prior to before it was even a house here, this was Native American land. So we've had 2 archaeological digs on site, actually 3, but they found over 20,000 artifacts. And a lot of the artifacts they found were Native American. So they determined through those digs that before there were any European settlers in the area, this was all Native Americans, the Lenape were here. So,
And this house itself, it pretty much predates the country, correct? Like it was here even around the Revolutionary War, and actually might have even played a little bit of a part of the Revolutionary War even.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the family that was here at that time were the Fields family. So they were here on the land from the 1720s up until 1810. So there were 3 generations of the family here. And the generation that was here during the Revolutionary War, Mary Field was here. She was widowed. So during the Revolutionary War, she was trying to raise her family. She had many different businesses, a good chunk of land. And the Revolutionary War pretty much just broke out in her backyard. So we're right next to the Delaware River. I don't know if you just heard the train go by. But yeah, the American Navy came to visit her. And then rumors started going around when she talked to the American Navy that she was an American sympathizer. So her loyalist neighbors told on her to the British Army. So the British Army came to visit her to search all her property.
it's always the nosy neighbors.
Everyone has them. She told them to leave and they came back. And she told them to leave and they came back. Then they broke into the house and started running through the house looking for soldiers. To this day, we don't know if she really was hiding soldiers or if she had anything to do with soldier movement at the time. But she talked them into leaving. And then the next day, the Hessians showed up at 4:00 in the morning and said, "We want a quarter here." So that's what they did. They stayed.
Who were the Hessians, in case people know?
Okay, so Hessia was part of Germany because there was no Germany back then. It was a small province in that area and it had a very rich king. So what he did was he sold out his soldiers. So they're basically mercenaries from Germany that, were working for the British. And they were terrifying. So they were known to being very violent. They would beat people for the buckles on their shoes. So they would beat you over the smallest infraction. So people in the area were terrified of them.
And they were battle hardened.
They were
professional army.
Yes, they were. When they came here knocking on the door, Captain Rendon said that he would treat her kindly and take care of her and that he would protect her from anybody else who might want to come and quarter her. So she basically said, "Fine, come on in." What else is she going to say,
You didn't have a lot of options at that point.
No, you just had to play the game. So, and they didn't know who was going to win the war. They're They're normal people just caught in between things. But she liked him very much. She wrote to her sister that he was the sweetest little Dutchman you ever did see. They brought their own food, so it wasn't like they made the household poor by using up all their food stock. She brought her own doctor, which she credited saving her daughter Molly's life because her daughter Molly was very sick. Their own tailor. He brought his own tailor that was hanging out here.
And that's like uncommon in that time period. Usually they would just live off the land, live off the whatever they could capture,
Forage. Yeah.
go into a town, take over the town, and be like, well, we're here getting your supplies. So that was she kind of either lucked out or.
Yeah, she lucked out that he was very kind. Now, there was a man that was stationed a Hessian that was stationed in Bordentown at the time, and his last name was Ewald. And he had a diary on his adventures during the Revolutionary War, after the Revolutionary War, during the Napoleonic Wars. And his diary is preserved. And he actually talked about this house in his book and what was going on at the time. So it's one of the reasons that we know a little bit what was going on during that time period. We do know that there were a lot of famous loyalist political figures in Philadelphia in the time that were here in the house during that time period. So it's a time period of December 16th, 1776 until, of course, the 25th, when they heard the cannons going off in Trenton. And then they ran out of here.
And that's when George was crossing the Delaware, right?
Good old George, which was right down the
Christmas night,
just down the way, just a little tiny bit, crossed the Delaware and caused a lot of trouble. Apparently, there was a prisoner exchange on the property. There was 27 prisoners, I think I remember reading. We don't know where they were housed, but we did find a diary from the Victorian period that said the family had found a lot of Hessian artifacts in the basement. They found Hessian beer, if I remember correctly.
A couple swords and a couple guns, I believe.
Yeah. There was a sword that was hidden in one of the fireplaces that was found, I believe, in the 1980s or the 1990s. They found a sword hidden up in the fireplace. So it was there a very long time.
So, I mean, this house has seen a lot of history. As I understand, there's even like a speakeasy in the basement from the Prohibition era.
In 1922, prior to that, the fields were here, like Dawn said, until about 1810. The house changed hands multiple times over the years through private families and whatnot. In 1922, Mr. Glink, Heinrich Glink, he was a butler, he was a waiter down in Trenton, acquired the property, bought the mansion, and turned it into a famous restaurant. It was called Glink's Mansion House, and his family ran it from 1922 all the way up to the 70s. So a 50-year run, which is hugely successful. And yeah, he was the one who put the speakeasy into the basement. So the rumors we have and the family stories is first thing he did was hand dug the basement out 3 feet and put a speakeasy in, which is all original and still here. You should come visit and see it.
So this has been here for so long. What exactly, I mean, a lot of people don't even really know it's here, or at least they didn't before a certain period. What drew you guys or the organization to this house? And exactly how did the organization form?
Go first.
So I came on board about 5 years ago. The organization was already formed. Dawn's been here way longer than me. But what brought me here is I'm from the local area. I started doing a lot of research on my family. And I found in New Jersey, my family went way back to even the Revolutionary War. I had family members who fought in it. And I kind of had some family ties to Fieldsboro. My great-grandfather was one of the mayors here in the 40s and 50s. My family lived here for a short time, and they moved over to Bordentown, which is the next town over. But it always intrigued me, and I saw it on Paranormal Lockdown. And I was like, wow, this place is really, really close. Came over, started volunteering, started to do tours, and I just fell in love with it because it's such a piece of history that I don't think a lot of people in at least the local area know about how important some of the history is here. I mean, it's some of the biggest stuff that probably happened in the area in the Revolutionary War happened here, and this house has been here before and seen it all. So I think it's like a snapshot of American history, and I just don't think people know enough about that. And that's one of the things that drove me here is just to help spread that history. So Dawn can speak on how the organization started more, I believe.
Yeah, well, back a million years ago. No, I came on in 2010. I had a friend who found the house on a list of historic houses, and she called the mayor at the time and asked if we could come and see it, and he was like, "Cool." So we came, and this was long before we were 501c3. I mean, and the house was very cluttered. There was stuff everywhere. Stuff that was here from when the family still owned, the last family who owned the restaurant was still here. If you come here, you just fall in love with the architecture. And that was long before I even knew the history of it.
Mhm.
So I had contacted the historian at the time and just said, I would love to help out any way I can. I'll help you clean, I'll help you fundraise. So I actually became head of fundraising for a few years and started the website, and then just kind of moved on. Eventually, we got the okay to become a 501c3, which takes years, by the way.
Mhm.
And I think we got that in 2014.
Mm.
And then it was just slowly building. We asked for small grants, and the next grants are a little bigger and a little bigger and bigger. The more we fundraise, the more grants we can ask for, and hopefully build from there. So we can teach the history, we can talk about the architecture, we can talk about the archaeology, things like that. So there's so many different directions that we hope to go into.
Mhm.
And the ghost hunting is kind of interesting too.
And I think in the ghost hunting community, it's always important to understand and remember that we can't have hauntings without the history.
Right.
And I think that this place really encompasses a lot of that history, especially the pre-American history and all of the things that happened, the different beats in American history. It really showcases all of that here.
It does. It really does. Because, like you said, the history and the paranormal, in my opinion, go hand in hand. I mean, that's how I got started in paranormal, was through this place, through the history, and realizing how many cool places you can go for the paranormal, but also it helps save and preserve those locations that wouldn't get all the funding that some of the other locations do. It's just, there's just not enough money. And this is a great supplement way to people to come visit these places where they wouldn't be otherwise
Mhm.
and learn the history. So for me, it's telling the history, telling the people who lived in these buildings their story, and supporting nonprofits and historical locations save and preserve this.
Yeah, absolutely. And this house embodies everything about the American story.
Mhm.
Because even after the Revolutionary War, during the Victorian times, there were so many different families with different innovations that were here
Mhm.
at the time. And of course you have, little illegal stuff too. So that
Yeah.
kind of throw that in there too. So it just kind of, it's all around so many different things here to discover. A lot of places that you go to visit and you have one little moment in time, and that's really cool. We have way more than that.
Mhm.
And then, plus you never know if something's going to come up behind you and pull your hair. So that's fun too. It's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
And I
Right?
think that's really what makes our paranormal element a little different than some other locations, because we're not just a colonial house.
Mhm.
We were a house. We were a restaurant. We were here before there was even a house. Native Americans were here. I mean, there's just so many layers. It's not just one thing. Sometimes if your people come here and investigate, they feel like they're experiencing something possibly from the 1700s, something from the 1980s,
Mhm.
1920s. Like, you never know. There's just so many layers of history here that you just don't know who you're going to interact with or encounter, which I think makes it totally cool.
So you'd say it's a pretty diverse space, especially for investigators, historians, and even just a local resident that's curious about the history of their town, the history of their country. Now, is there something about this place that you want people to know specifically? Is there anything that you want people to take away when they come visit?
That's a good question.
It is a good question. I mean, our tours, we throw a lot of stuff out, a lot of information out. But my thing is, as long as they walk away with, "Hey, that was a really cool place." Like, they might not remember anything about the history of the house or the dates or anything like that. That's not important. But the important thing is like, "Oh, that was amazing." Like, I
Mhm.
touched the same walls as people before me,
Yeah,
hundreds of
yeah.
years before me, and it was a really cool feeling. And I think that's the most important thing. It's just like, ooh, the warm and fuzzies that you get when you come here.
The warm fuzzies. Some people come here and probably feel a little cold.
Well,
You know?
that's okay too.
That
Whatever you're
chill in
into.
the air.
Yeah, to kind of add to what Dawn said, I think the same thing. When people come here, I want them to kind of, instead of going to like a regular museum, because our house is in a different condition. We're not 100% restored yet, which we're working on. But I want to make it kind of interactive and try to make you feel like, hey, this is the story that people lived here. Imagine what it was like
Mhm.
then.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like stepping back in time with your imagination and kind of experiencing the house for what it is now, and trying to think like, wow, what it could have been. Like, this room could have been something else instead of it being already done for you. So that's one of our main challenges. But I also hope that it intrigues people into one, paranormal and the history, or vice versa. If they come here for the ghosts, they leave and go, you know what? I'm a little bit more interested in American history, American Revolution, or vice versa. If they come here for just history and they learn, wow, there's a lot of cool paranormal stories, maybe I'll go to another paranormal location and just keep, spreading the word on historical preservation and restoring old buildings. So
Yeah, and that's the difference between Kyle and I is he came here for the history and then had a couple experiences and really got into the paranormal. Well, I came for the paranormal. I was so intrigued with everything else that I got into the history.
So there's a little something for everyone.
yeah,
So
there's something for everyone. And like Dawn said, I came here and I was like, cool, it's a haunted house, but I'm just here for the history. And I was a skeptic for a long time and had a couple experiences that I was like, okay, in my opinion, ghosts are real. So, and that kind of spawned me into the whole paranormal world too. So
yeah.
Okay, well, you mentioned it. You mentioned you guys had some experiences. I want to know the good stuff. What kind of experiences are we talking here?
So
just a snapshot. Just a snapshot.
I'll give you my top. And me and Dawn are here a lot, and some of the other volunteers are here a lot. You kind of get desensitized to it, I guess, to a point. But when I first started, I just started doing tours, and I'm a mechanic by trade, so I'm very analytical and like why things make noise and move and all that. So I'm like, it's an old house, whatever, for a long time. But one of the biggest experiences was I was here during the day doing a regular history tour. Everyone left. It was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I went upstairs to shut one of the windows, and I was completely alone in the house. I knew that. Wasn't freaked out or anything. Went into one of the small rooms on the second floor, came out, and there was a 2 to 3-year-old little boy with blonde hair just staring right at me. We locked eyes, and then he just disappeared in front of me. And my brain didn't even register at the time what happened. I was just like, huh, that's weird. Went on, locked up, and then when I got to my truck, I was like, oh, that it was like, and there was no way, like, unless you experience it, like, there's no way to debunk what I saw. Like, there was a little boy in the hallway staring at me, like, plain as day. He just disappeared. So that's when I truly was like, all right, I can't second guess or debunk that. So that's what made me a believer. What was yours, Dawn?
There's a couple.
Top 2 or top 1?
Okay. Okay. The weirdest thing happened in this room, in this very room. So I don't talk too much about the story, but there is a spirit here, and I think his name is Jack. It's a guess. But
we have gotten the name Jack over the years.
Yeah, and so he's the only ghost that I've actually seen with my own eyes. But he had like slick hair and a little mustache kind of thing. And I was sitting in a chair, and a friend was sitting across the hallway. And all of a sudden, my whole left side was on fire. And she said, he just put his head on your shoulder. And so I was like, well, which shoulder? And she goes, your left shoulder. And it was just like electric. It was on fire. It was the weirdest thing ever. And I was like, everything, like, don't get up and run. Don't get up and run. Be cool. I'm cool. I can handle this. And I was like, okay.
I'm a ghost. So I got this, right?
Yep. And then she's like, he's looking right in your face, like right here. And like my whole side, I was like, this is not cool. This is not cool. And then all of a sudden she went into a trance and started singing, and it was so bizarre. And then she snapped out of it and it went away. And I was like, I don't know what that was, but that was really strange. I don't know. That was just bizarre. But I think that's the spirit named Jack that's here.
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, I think it's just because the house it's been here for almost close to 300 years. There's always been people living here. It's seen good, it's seen bad, and I think some of that energy, at least in my opinion, some of that energy remains. And I think people like it and want to stay.
And we have different experiences. Like Kyle seems to connect more with women and children. And I seem to connect more with the male spirits in the house. Because I remember talking to him. We were upstairs and I was like, well, I never saw a kid here. And I've been here for a while. I remember we started yelling down the hallway, hey, is there a kid here? And I have a recording of it. And all of a sudden we heard like a squeal, a giggle, and then ran down the hall. And I was like, I stand corrected. So,
yeah. And it's really cool to see, because we have people that come in from all over paranormal investigate here in Ghost Hunt. And it's cool to see different people come in, and everyone kind of seems to get different reactions. Depends on the group of people, but I mean, people seem to be having really cool experiences, and it keeps them coming back. We've had the same repeat people every year, twice a year, 3 times a year. They just love this place, and I think it helps too because we're 100% nonprofit. So we're all here, we're all volunteers. Everything we raise through the paranormal programming, the history, goes right back into the house to help save, preserve, and restore this amazing mansion. So
I think one of my favorite stories was Kyle was given a tour upstairs. And we always talk to the spirits. Like, you know, I tell them about the project. I'm like, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to raise money. I tell them how much money we raised any given event that we have. Kyle was doing an EVP session. He's like, can you come out and talk to us? And the EVP said, yeah, every day, every year.
Yeah, I remember that because I think it was one of our Candlelight tours. So we kind of it was during the Halloween season and we were doing them pretty regularly. And I guess I kept asking the same question. And
They're probably like, ugh. I can almost say, oh, God, it's time to go to
here
work.
comes Kyle with his stupid question. So it's pretty cool to kind of just be in a house that's 300 years old, even if you have no activity or anything. It's you're sitting in a piece of American history.
Yeah, totally.
Now, you mentioned candlelight tours. You're implying that the public can come in and take a tour of the house and, you know, maybe even be lucky enough to catch something, some kind of evidence.
So how we used to do the candlelight tours, right? So we used to do them like just like a history tour at night.
Right.
A little creepy with little candles, with a little bit of, you know, and everyone's like, tell us about the ghost. Like, all right, well, let me tell you the history. And they're like, tell us about the ghost. I was like, all right. So we got to the point where we had this idea. A lot of people like to ghost hunt. They do public ghost hunts. They don't have their own team or whatever. So, but some people just want to try it. So I thought, well, let's try this. So we have this idea, like, let's just do an itty bitty ghost hunt. So you get to go through the house in the dark. You get to check out like different kinds of equipment. So each different room has a different equipment that these guys talk about, show you how it works. Sometimes they get activity on it. And I think it's fun because it's just like not a lot of people want to sit in the dark for, you know, 5, 6, 7 hours looking at spiders, right? Because
I don't want to look at spiders.
90% of ghost hunting is just sitting in the dark waiting for something to happen, right?
Yeah.
But just a little taste, an hour and a half, you get to see the house, you get to hear the history, you get to see some cool stuff, maybe to have some activity, and you get to see some really cool toys.
Yeah, right? It's like a perfect blend because it's not too much history, it's not too much paranormal, and it's perfect for someone who wants to come and just kind of dip their toe into the paranormal. It's kind of like ghost hunting 101. Like this is like a shortened version just to see if you like it before you jump into an 8-hour investigation somewhere. And it seems to be really great, and everyone seems to have a great time. And we do get some activity on tour, so.
And we don't jump out at people because we don't have to.
No.
So some people are under the impression that we jump out. We don't do that. We don't need to. So sometimes you come on the tour and something really does happen to people. I've seen people like jerk backwards because something like grabbed its hand backwards, hair pulled, and then a lot of really cool activity on some of the equipment that they have too.
I know when I've come here for tours, we've gotten anything from the closet doors rattling. We've heard voices on camera. We've gotten, orbs, different anomalies that would pass through. So we've gotten a lot of good stuff here, when I came here. Would you say that any of your guests have gotten so spooked that they've had to step out?
One time I was
never on a candlelight tour.
Yeah, no.
The spirits here usually behave themselves on a candlelight tour. They think they kind of get like, all right, this is a short thing. They're not staying, so we're good.
One time on a tour, there were some kids. I mean, I say kids, they're probably your age, whatever. But and there was a reporter from one of the local newspapers. So while I was giving the tour, I was like, well, why don't I have a recorder. We could try a little, because of course, by the time we get to the second floor, like, tell us about the ghost. I'm like, fine, whatever. So we started asking questions. And there was a disembodied voice that answered. So we had asked the question, is there a servant in the house? And we're, yeah. And
it was disembodied voice.
It was a disembodied voice, so that they all heard it. So as soon as I heard the yeah, they all left. So it was only me and the reporter left. I was like, what are you going to do? So yeah, they were like, no, we don't want to stay. Okay, we're only halfway through the tour, but they left and they never came back again.
For the most part, like I usually tell people when they come for like a full paranormal investigation, if they're first time here or they're new to investigating, I said White Hill's a really great place to keep coming back and to start out because it's not. It has its moments where it can be a little spooky and intense, but overall, it's just a great place to investigate normal activity. We don't have anything evil here. We never had to pull anyone off the ceiling. It's just a fun. Cool place that people get some really great stuff.
Well, I can say as a repeat tourist here, it being a mansion, it does feel almost like a home base, especially for people that are really big in history and paranormal investigating. But on that note, you also do the more elaborate, involved overnight investigations as well, right? Now, explain to me a little bit about that. Is that something that the public does? Is it something that only professionals do? Is it a blend of both?
It's anyone who wants to come into a haunted house and investigate for by themselves, the group of 10 people. We do it on Friday nights. You can do Friday nights from 7 to midnight, or you can go on Saturday nights, 7 to 2 a.m.
Mhm.
So again, all the money goes right back into the house. That's more of a, we just show you the house. We'll give you a tour if you haven't been here, and the house is yours. You can investigate and see what you can find.
And I believe that even for people who aren't into the paranormal per se, they can still come here and enjoy the history during the daytime historical tours.
Yes, we do daytime historical tours along with our Candlelight tours. We're 100% volunteer, so we do as many tours as we can with our, our volunteer staff. But yeah, we have a little bit love everything. We feel like the paranormal. We got plenty of paranormal stuff. If you like history, definitely check us out because we got great history tours. Once a year, we do a history day with reenactors on the property. All kinds of, we do as many events as we can to get the community involved, to get everyone to kind of know about White Hill and experience how cool it is.
Now, this was just a bit of a snapshot of the things that we have planned. We do have a lot more stories on the paranormal sightings, a plethora more of the history.
Mm-hmm.
I know Dawn's like very, very passionate about the history, as you can tell.
Don't get me started.
So this is just a little bit of an introduction. And if we continue doing this, which I can foresee us doing this in the future, I think that we'll have a lot more to talk about in terms of maybe paranormal sightings from guests, as well as just more deep and enriching stories about the families that used to live here, about the people that used to inhabit the land, and a little bit about the area itself.
Yeah.
So
I think that would be great.
Yeah. So with that, I think we're going to wrap this thing up. Thank you so much for staying tuned. If you made it this far, we hope to see more of you soon.
Yeah, like, subscribe, all that.